Okay, so let's look at lesson 20, and it's going to go revert back to some radio planning. Um, Radio planning. What am I saying? It's going to be a bit of the media sales and the buying and the execution of airtime. So I'm going to make the lesson quite short, just because I have explained to you in terms of a laptop that I'm busy with right now, and I've got load shedding, poor battery, everything. But I'm gonna, like I say, I've got a couple of minutes left on it. I'm saying, let's have a look at it right at the bottom here. Yeah, got about 55 um, minutes on it, and I should be able to easily get through this lesson. Okay. Radio media planning. So, radio media planning is the science and the art of knowing where, when, and how to execute paid radio advertising elements on relevant radio stations. So, I'm going to just read one more of this and then I'm going to just elaborate as you know. So, media plan is a document put together by a client or a client specialist media agency, and it is assumed that in advertising is the solution to the client's marketing challenge, and it's necessary to purchase media space to reach the right target market for the client's marketing challenge. So we have spoken, I think, briefly about the whole conversation around sales and marketing and PR, and how yes, they're very different departments, but they are intertwined. Um, with respect to advertising in particular, working with, let's say, so sales and PR first would probably make a lot more sense, I think, to someone who's trying to like put the ideas together and see, well, who does what first. But if we have to think about the planning that goes into like even now, I mean, I want to get some sponsorships for the show, or want to get some advertising, whatever it is. Like a salesperson, for example, isn't a salesperson if they have the rate card that's with them. The rate card looks beautiful. It's got all the details. It's got how much you pay for a live read, how much you might pay for a promotion, or whatever it may be. But then rather more about understanding how packages might be sold as a better way to make a lot more money, obviously bring in a lot more revenue, but also being able to, at the very basics, convince a like at the correct the correct client for the correct station as well, the correct show for the correct audience as well, to sit there and convince them of an idea that you have and a pitch that they can see themselves fit with the station in many different types of ways, so that they can have options, right? So it's better to always have, let's say you identify certain clients. So for example, it might be Vodacom, or it might be Boston Media House, it might be Cotton On, or whatever it might be. And you will say, okay, cool, I think this is, obviously I'm kind of doing some research on the net and having a look at, let's say, whether they're launching a new product, or whether they are opening new stores, or they want to themselves also are trying to maybe reach a different audience. They bring in a new line, let's say, for example, like clothing. Like these are very easy opportunities for you to then go and say, cool, like I would like to, let's say, build like a rough pitch around that, and then go and obviously set up a meeting with their sales team, with obviously the people and their finance team, etc. Right, to make sure and see what can be done. You also have to really know the advantages of why, like, radio is, it's going to be it's going to be valuable as a choice or decision, and it's going to bring in revenue as in return on investment. It's a promise that you do make to them when you get into the final stages and say, okay, cool, like this is the estimated amount of return on investment. This is how it's going to actually work. I'm saying to you this, how we'll be able to transfer what we do on air into money for you, like a client in the shop, or let's say they're buying online or whatever it may be, right? But it really is, like I say, it's a holistic approach that doesn't just start with the rate card. We send it to them, and then we just, just wait for them to see. Maybe they feel like, like spending some cash and advertising on radio. It's really expensive to also advertise on radio. It doesn't matter whether you are doing it at a community level, because remember, community then it'll be scalable towards, let's say, the smaller businesses or the individual business or proprietor businesses. And so it'll be expensive for them regardless. It is an expense and also a risk at the end of the day, because you might spend that money and you might not really get what you expected out of it. That can be again to the fault of the station, or it could be the fault of the client as well, who might be pushy and might be pushing a wrong, like the wrong idea, but want to spend the money. Also, the radio station might not be responsible enough, in other words, to say, well, no, listen, it's not going to work. We should not take your money. But they normally just take the money and they go with it anyway. Okay, so most clients use media agencies to do their radio media planning, which is very clever. So we have media. I think Media Mark is maybe one of the bigger ones that really, so that exist, and they focus on strategic planning and understanding, obviously, um, but with alongside, let's say, these departments that do exist, you understand, within the radio station itself, that will, let's say, hire, let's say, Media Mark, for example, as an external source for resources as well at the same time, and that can also, we can just spend an hour just talking about the resources and how this independent like I say, a media strategist, should I say, media strategist is good. I like that word. That's kind of fancy, and it does actually reflect them quite well. An agency is a firm that creates promotional ideas, plans, and implements advertising campaigns. So they also provide other services to assist a client in entering and exceeding and succeeding, should I say, in a particular market. So many years ago, Mark Gilman, who was on Five a long time ago, really long time ago, maybe 20 years. Yeah, must be about that, 20, maybe 18 years. So he first started, when he got off breakfast, and they almost changed 5 p.m. all around. They said, this and that, whatever it may be. He went and he started basically what was the first version in South Africa of what Media Mark is today. So, but he would, let's say, so he would come up with the, let's say, promotional ideas, exactly as you would see there now. But it was very small business like. I mean, he had Five as his first client because he was the breakfast jock at Five. And so the thing is that at the same time as well, we must also note that ideas, which I've mentioned before, do sorry, I just want to check this here. So yeah, they do appear. I'm saying to you, they do appear from international also resources as well, which we will then go and pay for. So it's kind of better to have someone right here doing all that research, getting those type of formatics done and taken care of, and making sure that, let's say, you're working with someone like on the ground here rather than overseas as well. Okay. So a media planner in an agency will typically need the following information: the target market of the brand, the campaign period, the duration of the material, the budget, the reach and frequency of the objectives, and the environment in which, let's say, this particular activation wants to take place, whatever it may be, or let's say the socioeconomic environment, what it is that we can actually ask of, or what can we actually promote, or what will be useful in the listener's environment, or needed, or whatever it may be. So they are bigger draw cards. A radio media planner can use their knowledge and experience and the scientific data available to them to put together a really cool radio media plan for the client. So this plan helps clients make the best use of their advertising budget, but creates the most efficient radio ads and recommends the best radio station brand fits. We have to look at some of those aspects there that are there. It's very important, like I say, to understand. So the media planner, like with the agencies, will have this very high proficiency and expert professionalism in being able to identify target markets that are, I mean, one, obviously the station knows about that, but again, they will go and explore even further with their own methodologies and etc., and their own data capturing and consumption, kind of restructuring, like I've spoken about, three-dimensional, fourth dimensional data evaluations and stuff like that. The campaign period is very important. For example, is it a campaign maybe for a week? Normally, an activation is about 3 weeks or so. The duration, the material. So again, is it just something that we're gonna do in one link? Maybe do a teaser, do the one link, have a winner, and be out with it. And it'll happen perhaps maybe once every single show or twice every single show during the daytime. Is it only going to happen on the breakfast or the drive? Is it happening only on the drive? Wherever it may be, right? Okay. The budget that obviously we're working with, so that we can make sure that we know whether digital media is included, whether we are going to be doing anything like that's an experience, etc. Right? That costs a lot of money, etc. Partnering up with a concert, I don't know, reaching frequency objectives. So the thing is, again, that's kind of like also like what do we want? It's just outputs that we want as well. So um, again, are we going to be posting every single day? Are we going to be advertising like maybe 2 or 3 times an hour? There'll be a spot that runs that's part of their obviously the package that they bought into, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm just checking the powers, then I'll go on a pause and I'll repower it now and then start again. So let's look at that examples of basic media plans for a client's brand campaign. So if we look for just look, I'm just going to look at radio and just look at television so we can see the differences. You see the media principle, the secure high frequency to drive calls to action. That's really what we want to do. So, like for example, like we want them to phone in and do something, send us a text and do something, maybe a WhatsApp, but probably most likely like an SMS line if there is some kind of route of entry there. There might be some digital spin-offs from there as well, but it will require you can't win something just by just existing, right? You're going to have to actually do something for it as well. For example, let's say like a retail promotion, 8 opportunities to hear per week, subsequent waiting per week, so 5 opportunities to hear per week, block booking to own time bands, morning and afternoon drive, one advert per half hour leads into news or news headlines. Suppose you can, let's say, the news is sponsored or brought to you by our insurance, etc., etc. So again, it's just an example of. Please don't take this as the be all and end all, etc., etc. Right? Okay. So get television, for example, sufficient frequency to achieve cut through for TV. You know that I mean it's quite difficult. I would say it's more. I don't know. I don't know which ones are more effective. I think it just also depends. Again, like when you are watching TV, let's say you are watching 10 to 1, let's say like a multi-choice channel, um, as opposed maybe to SABC, whatever it may be. But regardless, the spot log is really heavy. Like there's a lot of adverts that do run, and it's you'd be surprised. It is expensive, but if you watch the amount of ads that are actually paid between TV breaks, like it's super long. I think it's like 4 or 5 minutes or so. Quite easily before, and on DSTV, oh my word, like we've said this before, it just carries on forever. Okay, so for example, let's say it's for a part of a brand, achieve 650 ARs over 4 weeks, launch the week, week three, in the launch week, 300 ARs through prime time waiting, and then maintain at let's say 550 ARs per week for duration. The first or last spot in the break, consider sponsorship packages for long term, especially mainstream sport. 70% prime time, 30% shoulder time. So that, again, everything else, it's prime time is again mostly your evenings there. It's about six onwards, maybe five, even 5, 6, 7 prime time. No two brand adverts should ever be in the same break, and that we know, especially again, even if we look at it from a radio perspective, want to be able to know that we are not putting, let's say, Celsi and Vodacom in the same break as well. It makes no sense. And also the client or the consumer is going to be really upset. Just on a sidebar, just in terms of billboards, so that out of home, the OH, Also just it's really, I want to just kind of sum that up in terms of like the obviously the flashier, I suppose, it's the flashier and the more catchy and the more eye intriguing, whatever it may be, that particular excuse me, yeah, that particular a billboard is, and also if it makes sense, right? Will it stand out and be effective? Like, what do we want to actually do? Selling a car, won't tend to want to put the price on there. Will obviously show a little bit more of the glamour that it is, that obviously it encompasses, right? But more so, we'd like to kind of, stay away from that large number because it's probably going to be an expensive car that's on a billboard right there. Other things that we see on billboards, like a lot of things for insurance. I mean, there's that one that I constantly pass with. I think it's our insurance. It doesn't really. It says it puts a little star because obviously terms and conditions apply, and it says 28 rand per day, and it looks so cheap, but it actually isn't. 28 rand, let's say about 30 bucks a day, times it by, let's say, 30, you're talking about like 900 bucks. I think that's my, I think that, yeah, 3 by 3. Yeah, that's a lot of money to be paying for just car insurance, for example, right? Actually, a lot of money. So that 28 rand might fool you into, let's say, getting onto a call or requesting like a little bit of a, like a quotation from our insurance, but then they've already done half the work. In other words, they're already halfway into your head, and so could obviously land on a sale. Just give me a sec. I'm just gonna do is charge the laptop just for a second. Second. Okay. So let's continue. Okay. So frequency, the average number of times that a listener will hear the advert. It takes the average person about 3 listening occasions to really kind of bring the message across and to ensure that the understanding and of what the advert is actually offering. For example, if you are, let's say just the simplest adverts, the most effective adverts are the ones that are hard sells. So, for example, let's say Checkers has a bunch of specials, or Checkers, has this new sushi bar or whatever it may be. The things that are straightforward, as I say, are a lot more effective. Again, sorry, I just want to add this here. And then, yeah, yeah, they will obviously translate a lot clearer to people. With the more the advert is a little bit more a little bit too creative, right? A little bit too convoluted, then the message is actually lost because we are listening passively. So we need to also just kind of remember that as well. All right. So it is. I'm just going to zoom in here just to give you a little bit of an example of what the planning is like, just for radio in specific. So there, for example, like there in radio, say National Metro FM and Okozi Regional KFM 997. Morning and afternoon drive, weekend specialists, music shows, tactical outside broadcasts are the options there. We can have just a little look down, so just scroll down just a little bit here. Frequency and the reach is like we show sponsorship packages, sports reports, and bulletin sponsorships. And you will see the difference in that. We just compare it to, for example, print and TV. If I've got some time, let me try and go through as many as I can. I want to just go to TV immediately here. For example, your DSTV, your Mzansi Magic, Channel O, MTV, like a weeknight, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Really great times, obviously, to be, you know, putting your advertising out there because they are great. Like it's great traffic times, very busy. So people watching weekend sports events and music lifestyle programs are great opportunities there. Positioning and reach, sports packages, music shows, sponsorships. We look at print, for example. So print. Then I just want to say, because I don't want to confuse the two together with digital, please. So we still, I mean, if you walk past, any supermarket you go to, like there is like a massive long row of magazines that are still very, and they're very expensive, by the way. I'm sure $69 for, I think, a main South or whatever it may be. But some of the options, for example, we're aligned to feature content and influencer profiling, birthday months, experience giveaways, and cover features. There could also be, just let's have a look at some of the see how too far there. Just look at the approval. Yeah, sorry, the approach, education, and second year. So just managing this differently. Okay, so let's move the actual. Just a little too long. There you go. Back. Second. Yeah. So there we go. Negotiated, added editorial and public relations and value of the back of editorials and products, etc. So just to kind of explain that, just knowing principle quite well. There's certain parts of a magazine that are and newspapers as well that are a lot more expensive because it's just like, for example, like page 3, for example, is very very big. Um, and obviously the back page as well is also a good place to put your advertising in there. So they will obviously be at higher rates, just like you would find, for example, in radio, like breakfast shows would be a higher rates at, it's about 7:15 in the morning, even a little earlier, 6:45 to 7:15. And each one of these, as I say, have their strong points. And I say the times that you should be actually looking at, to be advertising. Yeah, out of home is obviously a little bit more different. Like again, as I said, like you got to be very aware of how and what it is that you're putting in there. There was a billboard that was on the way to, it was on Grayson Drive, and it said, "Why do you litter?" And it said like something. It was very offensive. Like it said, "I'm just plain stupid. Like my mom didn't teach me manners or something like." And it was by no means effective. It was maybe the dumbest like billboard ad I've ever seen in my life. To actually kind of infer and insult somebody. Yes, okay, sure. Littering is not exactly the best thing that you should be doing because of, or it's environmental, um, effects. I'm saying cause and effects from that, and it's just not nice. We don't want to dirty streets. What doesn't matter, but you don't have to, like, you're not making someone feel worse by calling them stupid. You can just look at, let's say, an argument you might be having or a fight that you might be having with someone. And if you go and try and be on the defensive or offensive, whatever it is, and you are attacking them personally, like you're not going to win that argument. So really stupid ideas have been coming out. And if you let's say when you are at work, because I know you are part timers and you're driving back, just take note of how many of the billboards that are out there that are actually effective and they actually do make you think, okay, cool. I mean, even if I don't have the money for that car, this would be like a nice option. I'd like to work towards something like that, or I can see myself definitely in something like that, and so on and so forth. Things, for example, like the car train and airports and stuff. That's I mean, is it necessary? Because we know that the airports are there, we know that the car train is there. For example, like the car train, I, unless there is, unless there's like a new stop, for example, where the car train will now obviously make its commute. I don't see the use of putting the car train on a billboard personally. It makes no sense. It made a lot of sense, obviously, in the beginning to make sure that people could use it. It was safe, that type of stuff. There should have been a lot of other adverts as well in terms of TV and radio, as well as print. It doesn't really matter. When you do have a media strategy that you are coming, like you are approaching, saying, okay, cool, like it has to be like holistic in terms of all these different aspects: digital activities, events, out of home, TV, print, radio. All of these things must be intertwined in some way or another to really know that you have tried, let's say, your best to reach your consumer at every level. So I'm going to just put that a little further down so we can actually see what's going on here. The radio media planning principles in the previous image show us that stations choose, or stations chosen It shows station chosen campaign, the time channel that's selected, the approach to the type of the shows the ads will be played in, the types of radio advertising that will be utilized. And so again, like I said, this one here is just an example of a client's brand, target market detail overlaid with media planning principles. Okay, so as I mentioned before, it is better to just this is the approach that you should have, obviously holistically, and then move forward from then onwards. Okay, so and wow, my PC just wants to do everything and anything at once. Okay, so just some advantages. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but production of advertising material is relatively cheap. When we are considering, you know, um, different aspects, and we consider them in certain ways. You got to be clever about obviously how you decide to. Let's for example, below the line marketing. Below the line marketing is very effective. Effective. It's when you see people handing out pamphlets and stuff like that. That is super cheap, very effective because you are handing about, let's say, 500 out. You will get about, let's say, 20 to maybe 50, callbacks for what it is that you're actually handing out, in peak traffic and stuff like that. Targeting is very geographically specific. High frequency is possible to improve the chance of converting listeners from hearing the advertisements to doing what it is, telling them what to do. So why continued? Why is radio a good option? Radio is a live medium, so it's happening in real time. So again, it's just that the whole way that we interact and connect with the listener that really gives us that leverage of being able to just get into their face, into their ears, into their brains, and their subconscious immediately as well. Presenters can enable personal one-to-one listening experience. Listeners are habitual in their listening patterns, so you can be confident of reaching people very regularly. Targeting can be time specific. Radio listening is mobile. Targeting can be language and interest relevant. Radio delivers reach and frequency. Radio is synergistic. So, in other words, it is synergy with other types of media, like we said there, out of home. Again, with others, print, etc., 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 and so on and so forth. Some of the disadvantages: there is no imagery, so we got to rely on obviously the theater of the mind. And again, the simpler the ad, and the simpler the way we make an activation, if we are going to be like partnering up with a certain brand or product, whatever it may be, I want to make it simple so that what happens at the end of the day, if it's, let's say, someone's going to get money, cash out of the competition or whatever it is, it's cool. Make it easy for them. Make sure that obviously we push, like where this came from, like who's the sponsor. Like we color it up in every aspect of like being able to just add a couple of very short I say billboards, that express, let's say, maybe one special or one aspect with just the kind of the tagline or whatever it may be, that's cleverly intertwined with, let's say, like a traffic piece or this or that or whatever it may be. Okay, there are limited spots available. We can't keep advertising. Just it might be a great advertising month, but then the sales rep really needs to be a little bit more smarter, like just a little bit more clever in terms of how that person, that the sales, that the sales executive or person can stretch that out in different ways, either in live reads, to versus activations versus outside broadcasts versus whatever it may be as well. Okay, so it can become wallpaper. People can start to conduct multiple other tasks while listening. So it just might be in the background. It's transitory, so that you cannot go back to an advert or consider it for longer. So that's something that we could obviously find advantage more in digital and obviously in print. And brand image risk. You can never know what a radio presenter host might do next. For instance, the radio presenter reads your advertisement script on air and then discusses the topic afterwards, which then conflicts with whatever it is. For example, let's say you're doing the first for women, but then afterwards you are doing a specific call out on feminism that is painting. I mean, feminism is has of late, for example, been painted in a very bad light, and like first woman is going to have a massive problem with you, having not planned that as well, just in terms of like a presenter must know they'll have their spot log, and they'll have their, let's say the competition briefs or whatever it is. So they should plan around, or maybe they should just leave that entire conversation out just for the time being and have it at another point, maybe if it is relevant. Okay. Um, uh, Give me a second. Just want to pause again. All right, let's try a couple more slides. I reset on. Okay. All right. So when we going to summarize what's over here. So when we book time to obviously advertise and whatever we want to do, again with all those different aspects and different forms of advertising that I explained to you on air. A couple obviously things have to happen, just in order. So just so that you note, like some terminology, flighting means that that's the period that when the advertising is going to run on air. We're going to manage the complexity of different types of material. As I said, there could be, there's a lot of preparation in the process, and there's again like imagine it in phases. So we'll actually go to a diagram that will show you a couple of the steps actually from start to finish in just a moment, so you can see how that actually works. Media practitioners want to secure the best deal for clients, so we make sure that we don't want to obviously give them value for their money at the end of the day. We also want to know how much they can spend. So that's the initial conversation that does actually happen. They say, okay, look, with this type of like advertising budget, or like and obviously promotional budget or whatever it may be, and what can we do with it? What is the best that you can do for us as well, and how can we stretch it as far as we can? The aim for optimal efficiency in their in media planning. Obviously, the I'm saying to you now, from our side, they try and find good radio station deals that will offer a low cost for reaching 1,000 listeners. Why the 1,000? Measurement is called the cost per thousand, and the M is French for Millet, right? So let us go to the next slides to finish this process. I want to show you the diagram. The whole thing is obviously administered quite carefully. So because there is money being spent, there has to be accountability at the end of the day, and so we must monitor what is booked, paid for, and flighted. Each advertising element that is booked is given in a flighting, or given a flighting code. The code is actually coincided with a watermark that actually can't be heard by the human ear. It's just something that is a code that is watermarked in the ad itself, so that special monitoring equipment can pick up the watermark audio signature when the advertising plays on air, and so we can actually put that towards the traffic department, not the traffic in terms of cars and stuff. But there's a media traffic, sales, marketing, slash whatever it may be, right, in this advertising department that is called the traffic department, that will deal with and has software that does maintain all the admin, and again collectively this summatives of what is happening on air. Okay. And let's look at this. This is the diagram actually. So let's look at the steps, and we can kind of finish up from there. Number one, new radio plan gets approved by the client. A radio plan is sent to the radio station. So again, remember, we're going to use obviously the agencies in this particular example. Radio stations book spots and campaign elements. The radio stations then revert to radio media practitioners with any unavailable slots and propose alternatives. Radio media practitioners will then confirm alternatives for booking and updates onto their media plan. I just want to kind of just go down this tiny little bit just so you can see that. Radio stations will issue contracts confirming what elements have been booked and what the costs and discounts for the campaigns are. We then will say in the next step, media practitioners issue flighting codes to radio stations to identify each spot. And monthly, the radio station practitioner will bill the client, and the radio station bills the radio media practitioner, the agency, according to the broadcast contract. Media practitioner will then comply to a post-campaign analysis to confirm correct correct flighting as per the contract. And the last step is that the media practitioner negotiates compensation wherever there is necessary. So again, just to kind of like look at the summary of that, as you can see, there's really like the three main roles are the agency, the radio station, and the client itself, and being able to make sure that once again, step by step is I say there's quality management that does occur throughout each step. When we do quality management, we want to make sure that things are obviously. Obviously outcomes are met, but also they have a certain measurements or that will then quantify that qualitative process as well. So, for example, let's say we might have, let me give a good example here. Let's say like let's just go through. Let's say like the radio stations refer to radio media practitioners with any unavailable slots and propose alternatives. Would be part of like a risk management, but also that quality analysis within there. We have to also see with the client, for example, be like, okay, cool, like does this suit the client's needs? Does it suit what let's say they initially came in for, what we agreed with? Not that you're going to go off course with it, but you are giving them the same quality at another position or at another alternative, as what says there, right? For example, there's at number 8, monthly, the radio media practitioner bills the client and the radio station bills the radio media practitioner. Again, that kind of like qualitative process as well. Just small things like errors, and also you got to check according to quotations and how that was done in the beginning. And quotations are a little bit of an estimation, but quotations must be decided upon as something that is a lot more obviously like it's a lot more sedimented, a lot more obviously finite and formal, so that there isn't a guessing game. There aren't any extra costs that the client actually will get upset about at the end of the day. In terms of compensation, compensation refers to the monetary or value in kind awards that an organization receives for a job. So in radio, compensation is often referred to when an advertising campaign was not flighted, wasn't run correctly. So, for example, a job might have forgotten to, let's say, play it. Let's say, it wasn't scheduled by the traffic department correctly, didn't go at the right time. Remember, every quarter hour is at a different rate. Okay, obviously depending on how many people are listening at certain quarter hours within an hour without getting throughout the day, how that changes then as well. Radio stations then have different compensation policies, and depending on what the client and who the client is and what they want and the level of expenditure with the station, compensation deals can vary. So, for example, we might tell them, we'd like to obviously, freely advertise let's say three commercial bracket spots, because this was now not done when you need it to be done. Um, DJs sometimes make the mistake, and it's a really big mistake because of the ripple effects that it does have on different departments that have worked so hard to get the client, to get the money, to do the process. You saw the different steps there as well, and then they go and they just kind of frivolously not play, let's say an ad before the top of the hour, and they play it like a minute two at after the top of the hour, which is those two quarter hourlies cost completely different prices. So the thing is that the client will always be listening. They always do listen, regardless of whether they are there is the entire recording process. They're going to have someone within their own departments listening to make sure that what is shared with us as an agreement is met. Let's just look at the last slide here. several reasons for which compensation might be deemed necessary, including the spot didn't fly due to the radio station's own technical failure. The spot was loaded in the incorrect time slot, and the incorrect spot was flighted. So this is why flighting codes for different spots are essential. The client's media agency will often present various compensation options to the client and so forth. Please have a look at activity 10B on page 318, and we will revisit this particular one next week when we have a full working system. Okay, let me just try this.